This morning we're here to harvest these potatoes. Now these potatoes were planted about 5 months ago at the beginning of June, which is the beginning of winter here in Tasmania, and they've been growing here in the greenhouse over winter and spring. It's now early November, which is late spring here in Tassie, so after these 5 months we're ready to dig and actually see what's in here.
Yeah.
It's an interesting experiment. The last 2 winters I've been experimenting growing potatoes in the greenhouse to see what I could produce over winter. The summer crop, which we grow outdoors, we harvest generally in January or February, and while we've only just finished eating last year's, which has been in storage for around 7 months, we've now run out of that summer crop, and now while we still have some potatoes from the autumn crop to consume, without these we would have a little bit of a gap, usually the end of the year, like in December, where you would potentially run out of potatoes. So producing this potato crop over winter and into spring, which comes so early and allows you to fill that gap, is an essential component of allowing us to get potatoes all year round. Yes, Sammy?
You don't have potatoes, you want how to cook chips.
That's right. So, because we like to be self-sufficient in potatoes, this is an important experiment. So let's get in there and see what we can find.
Yes, Dad, let's do it. Let's dig.
Right, so
Those delicious
let's get
potatoes.
this watering system out of the road first though, Daniel.
Yeah. You bet you me have to. You're right, Dad, we have to. Get this water system out of the way.
Okay, let's see what we've got here, Samuel.
Where is some potatoes here? Oh.
Last year, when I grew them in strawbale, and the resulting crop wasn't that good. So I'm really interested to see how this compares growing in ground.
Potato one.
I see there's a lot more there. Let's see, have we got everything out of there?
Wait, Dad, wait.
Get these little ones out too. If we leave those little ones there, Samuel, they'll grow. We don't really want more potatoes coming in here. What do we got?
Potato, yummy, yummy, yum.
See that? No, see that? That's the one that grew from.
It's yuck. Oh, potato. Nice. Potatoes. We can make some chips for these.
That's right.
These are good potatoes. Wow. A potato. Potatoes are made. Yup. Wiggly ones.
Potatoes there.
Yummy do, Dad. Hey, look what he is. It looks like he's a baby snake to me.
Be careful with the worm, please. Just go and put the worm in the soil first.
Okay, Dad. Which bed box?
Anyway, okay?
I need one more log. Oh, what do you have, Dad? That's very nice potatoes. Dad, these are huge potatoes. Wow. My shirt is stuck. Oh. Great big. Me can't lost big potatoes. Worms are hungry, you know, so they need to be on something.
There we go.
Potatoes! Oh, good one. Why potatoes that me? Potato, my oh my! I'm down here. Get it? Whoa! Nice, Dad. yummy potato.
Okay, so that's all the potatoes dug now, and in terms of a result, this really is so much better than what I got last year out of the straw bale. These potatoes are beautiful size, aren't they, Samuel?
Yeah, they're big and huge.
Yes, there's some small ones in there, but I was quite expecting perhaps even more small ones considering the cooler conditions that these grew in.
And this one's big.
It's a fantastic potato, Samuel.
Yeah, so nice ones.
Potatoes really are, I think, one of the best staple crops that you can grow for a home gardener in terms of what you can produce. The amount that I have produced here, I haven't weighed them yet, so I'll be interested to see, but in terms of that, I've grown that over about 3 square metres of ground to produce this amount of potatoes. Don't drop them, please, Samuel.
But Dad,
no, just
but
leave.
that one's huge.
Yes, but don't drop them, please.
Okay, Dad.
Is really good. So I'm going to continue to experiment with growing potatoes indoors over winter to actually fill that gap. If I can increase the amount that I produce and grow more than one bed,
Good.
but I certainly think the in-ground result was so much better than the straw result that I got. The straw is great with tomatoes, as I'm doing here, and have done the last couple of years, but I think in the cooler temperatures the straw doesn't compost so well and produce the nutrition that the potatoes need. If you recall, I did have potatoes that came up under black plastic early in spring or late winter, and when I took the plastic off, they did experience some frost that set them back a little bit, but they're actually now growing quite well and will be the first potatoes that we get after these, so that the first really of the spring potatoes. And really that does mean that if you combine this result with what was happening outdoors with them growing under the plastic with the extra warmth, that you could very easily, in a climate like this where potatoes will grow in the winter, providing they don't get the frost and have that little bit extra warmth, you could plant them outdoors and use some hoops and cover it with plastic and get them started over winter, and then take that plastic off once the warmer spring conditions had come along to actually bring a much earlier crop in. And that's a really important factor to achieve potato self-sufficiency, so that you fill the gap between the crops. Because keeping potatoes long term is a little bit tricky. There is one element in keeping potatoes that I'll show you in a moment which does allow you to extend the keeping time, and as I said, with the last summer crop I managed to keep them for 7 or almost 8 months, which is a fairly good result. So weighing the potatoes, they came in at 16 kilos, which is I think a pretty good result for, as I said, about 3 square metres of soil. So in sorting potatoes, which is a good idea when you've harvested them, is to sort them out. These larger ones are going to keep a lot better, and if you put them all together, my experience is that you tend to use these larger ones first, and little tiny potatoes like this get left. And really these small potatoes, which eat just fine, are much better eaten when they're freshly harvested. So they really need to go at the top of the list for consumption, and these larger ones for later consumption. Okay, Samuel, you want help? Pick out the big ones.
That's a big one.
Put those in.
So where are the more big ones? Is that big?
Out of these that are left, they could further be divided into 2 classes. This size could be kept for growing and would be quite good for growing another crop, whereas these really small ones, probably from that size down, is too small and is best eaten. But ones like Samuel's got and these are quite good for growing, so they can either be eaten or put aside for growing the next crop. Potatoes store really well for a certain amount of the year, particularly over late autumn and winter when it's cool, but as warmer weather comes on they begin to want to grow. Now if you leave them to grow like this, the potato itself will become rubbery and start to dry up, and of course you'll get longer and longer plants. It's the natural inclination of the potato to grow. The thing that I've found that you can do to actually store them longer is to actually rub these off and put them back into storage, so that you're going through and working through your potatoes like this. Now you might have to do this, particularly in spring, you might have to do it at least once a month, but it stops the growth in the potato and really extends the shelf life of the potatoes. What people often don't realise is that when they buy potatoes in springtime that have been in storage for some time, this has actually been done by a machine from the potatoes they are buying. But the potatoes have begun to shoot and it has been rubbed off by machines. So this is simply something that you need to do yourself to extend the life, and it's a worthwhile time expenditure. It doesn't take that long to go through your potatoes and do this. So using this method you can extend the life of your potatoes and achieve potatoes all year round. Now we'll be able to enjoy them. They'll be nice and easy to use in the kitchen too, not having those shoots on them. So all in all, I'm really happy with the winter growing experiment. The result was fantastic and I'll be repeating it again next year.